fuck with that ending, man. Okay, look, I'm sorry, but a real cliffhanger needs a series of events that make it an actual cliffhanger. Just because you stop before an event happens or right at the crux of an event does not a cliffhanger make. You had me. I was with you. And then, bam, you end it. I have a couple of gripes. Overall, this is not a bad episode. Let's get into it. What's up, my know-it-alls? Welcome to another review of The Acolyte, this time episode 4. So after last week's episode, which was extraordinarily divisive, several things came out. So I'm going to cover those real fast, and then we'll zip right into this thing. There's a series of time codes down below. Feel free to click past this a little bit if you want. When it comes to the twins, it has been more than established for me over the last week, both on TikTok as well as on YouTube, that the two girls are in fact sisters, and that's great. They're fraternal twins. That means they are not identical twins. I've had more than one insensitive person who's like, they're totally identical. You sound dumb. Please stop, because you're only making things worse for yourselves. The other stuff, the gripes, listen, I'm down, I'm here. You guys have compelled me to keep watching, and I'm going to keep watching. I will say, you're probably not gonna like some things I have to say this week. If you were all about me being negative last week, which I don't know why you would be, because I hate being negative. I'm all about people loving stuff. Again, I'm gonna reiterate, if you love this show, chef's kiss, awesome. I'm here for it. I'm down for it. I think we as Star Wars fans need to appreciate and love the things that we love, hands down. We also shouldn't be afraid to look at and evaluate with a genuine critical eye. Now, if your genuine critical eye is, well, it's because there's women and lesbians or witches and whatever, and it's this and that and woke and whatever, let me stop you. I'm not in your camp. I am absolutely not in your camp. I'm a Star Wars fan. My wife's a Star Wars fan. She's pulled me in, and I love them. I'm starting to really enjoy the fandom. I love the people. I had to go online and watch people who were real hardcore Star Wars fans get real heartbroken last week because they love the show. There's a lot of good things the show is doing, and I'm not against any of it. If you're looking for a step-by-step, inch-by-inch recap, I'm not going to do that. Hopefully you've watched the episode, because we're just going to talk about some parts that I really thought were great. Let's go. I'm just going to get this out of the way right now, and we're not going to talk about it again, because it's still the same. The acting is still atrocious. The acting is very stiff. The actor who plays Saul is doing an amazing job, trying his hardest with obviously English is not his first language, but at the same time, he's emoting just great. But beyond him, there isn't a lot of good acting happening here. Oh, that's not true. The actor who plays Kamir is doing a really good job as that character. And we'll talk about him. I'm gonna put a pin in that till a little later. But overall, not a fan of the acting on this thing. That's it. All I'm going to say about that. Moving on. The writing was better this week. Still stiff in parts. By stiff, I mean, I feel like we're shoehorning some thoughts into this whole thing. But overall, as in, I feel like this is probably a second or third draft. And it feels as if the notes that were given by whomever were wedged in versus trying to more smoothly transition, because there's places where things just feel stuck. There's an interaction between Jackie and Osha that feels genuine, but it felt like it felt very obtuse, and they needed to give us the fact that she was leaving so that Saul could come back and catch her and whatnot and pull her back in, which sort of made that moment feel a little clunky. Again, just the transition between those things. That's speaking as a writer who's actually worked in a Hollywood writer's room before. So that's really it. Overall, though, this was a much better episode, except for the fact that it's a half an episode. So, and that's the other problem I have. This was a half of an episode. This was not a whole episode. And everybody's online who's like, it's a cliffhanger, it's a great cliffhanger, greatest cliffhanger. No. I'm a Star Trek fan. We know something about cliffhangers, okay? Cliffhangers have to do a certain thing. I just saw Doctor Who last week. Doctor Who was a wonderful cliffhanger. Little full in areas, but you set things up to then pay them off, or just before you're leading up to what's going to be that payoff, then you have your cliffhanger. A good example would be if you were to have, we should have gotten into this fight. gotten into the fight, which would have paid off all the slow burn that was happening in the beginning of the episode. And then, which, by the way, 30-minute episode, you don't have a whole lot of slow burn to give. The episode was actually 24 minutes if you count all the credits and everything else. Because we're like, at 24 minutes, this thing was done. We're like, what? Anyway, you have them get into this fight, possibly have... if whoever the Sith guy is going to mop the floor with them, fine. And you start with that big explosion. Maybe they're running around. Dude's going after what's-her-face. Her sister wants to save her, protect her. They run. They get to a thing, whatever else. Dude either takes the sister, does something, whatever else. And now she's faced... Osha is faced with something big that has to happen. The other Jedi are stumbling over themselves. Saul barely makes it. And then what you do is either A, you kill Saul. Have him face the Jedi and have him face the Sith. You kill Saul. You want Osha to be the hero. That's clearly being set up. Or you want this backtrack, which we're going to get into, that May does, to also pay off. Somehow you want the two sisters working together. That's where you want to ultimately take this moment. But before that happens, then your cliffhanger should come in. Something has to happen where a decision has to be made, something has to go, and the point of a cliffhanger is to question what's going to happen next. Instead, you got Sith dude who shows up, blows them all back, and then what? And now you're stuck wondering, okay, well, you know what's come next. It's going to be a fight. We know what's happening. All we're looking forward to now is the fight, which is probably going to only take the first few minutes of the next episode, and then we'll have all this other stuff. I'm hoping and praying to God that we're not going to get another flashback bottle episode just to give us more context and story. Because if the front half of next week's episode is just backstory, because there's scenes from the trailers we haven't seen yet, and that may be because they've been cut. I doubt that, though, in this context. You see that more in movies than you do with shows. Like there's a series of Kalnaka with a lightsaber jumping and doing some things, and we haven't seen that yet. We still have to see what happened. Saul gives us briefly that kind of he name drops. When this is all said and done, I'll explain everything to you.
You're going to face your past. Both of us will. Once we get May safely to the ship, I'll explain everything.
So clearly there's more information that needs to be explained to us. I'm hoping that we don't start next episode like in the past in a bottle somewhere, only to then come back to the fight toward the end and then get what would be a genuine stopping point. I have a feeling that at the end of all this, I'm going to need to either rewatch everything straight through and then do a series review then, because I feel like once we have the whole breadth of the story, I'll be able to kind of process everything together. Because as it stands, the editing choices, I don't mean the editing of each episode, but the choices of where to cut the episodes has been real, what we call in the industry horsey. It just feels like it's up and down and just sort of running you ragged. So that's what I mean by that. All right, back to the main thing. Did I need the pronoun game with these creatures? Not really. Listen, I get it. Star Wars is forward thinking. We want to be inclusive and diverse. And I agree to a point. There comes a point though, when you start to wave it in everybody's face over and over and over again, and it loses its efficacy and loses its genuineness and its in-story, like genuine setup, and instead becomes a, hey, look, we're diverse. Hey, look, we're inclusive, and just make them part of the story. Recently, I heard another reviewer talk about specifically the Fallout show and how Fallout has a female lead and a black lead and all this other stuff. And why was there no pushback? It was Grace Randolph who brought it up. And I think the answer is simple. They never made it a thing. Don't make it a thing. Those of us who are enjoying this are enjoying what it is. You don't have to keep Pride Monthing us. I get it. I'm loving it. Great. I see characters that look like me. I'm all for it. Let's get back to Star Warsing, please. So apparently the Jedi scheme behind the back of their own council, which I thought was weird. And it's not weird in a bad way. This isn't a canon thing or some nonsense like that. This is just, I'm like, okay, all right. I'd never really thought of that in that context, but sure. I mean, I know that Green Lady has been saying over and over again, Master, I can't remember her name right this second, I'm sorry. But she's been saying we need to be careful, our political enemies. So during the High Republic, I'm guessing, because I have not read a whole lot of High Republic material. I tried, it felt very YA novel for me, and that may actually be the point. I've sort of shifted out of that YA mindset. And so it's a little difficult for me. The last YA series I read with any kind of seriousness was the Twilight series, because someone had dared me to read it and I actually ended up enjoying it, the books. So at the end of the day, I don't really read a lot of YA material, and that's how it came across. Our boy Ki-Adi-Mundi is there, and everyone seems to be losing their collective crap about him being there. It breaks canon, it's this, it's the other. Look, calm down. Everyone, calm down. I don't know that it breaks canon that he's there, because remember, this is 100 years before the rise of the Empire. So that's before Revenge of the Sith, not Phantom Menace. There's some years between Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith. So you guys got to remember, if you go by Revenge of the Sith, this is when the Empire rises, which I believe, then you're actually not in a bad place. Also, dude's got dark hair, but the whole bit. And everyone's like, but he said the Sith haven't been seen for a millennia. Yeah. What part of any of this changed that? To be real for a second, I don't think anything changed that. It's funny, I've been responding to those. I've been hitting those on X and Threads and whatnot with, what if the reason he doesn't know is because nobody comes back? That's a very viable circumstance, which is they send a bunch of Jedi, ain't nobody making it out alive. That's a very realistic moment for this. The series that's gone to some dark places, that's a very real, it's very realistic. Nobody coming back. And it's not just nobody's coming back because they're defeated, because they're whatever. It's very plausible. And we'll get into who I think the Sith person is and where that all fits within the greater storytelling, assuming there's any more connection to canon that we want to actually make. So we're all in agreement that Kamir's the bad guy, right? Kamir's either the master or he's the master's apprentice of some sort, right? Because they've telegraphed that. Now, I would normally go, oh, they must be telegraphing it because it's not going to be true. That takes smarter writers. Look, I may be enjoying the ride, and I may be enjoying the way the universe is being expanded, but let's be real for a moment here. These are not the greatest writers in the world, and I don't think they're that deep or nuanced. I think that they're about as nuanced as a hammer to the head. So that being said, I do believe firmly that Kamir is, and I said that to Mrs. Know-It-All back in episode 2, mainly because there's something about the way he carries himself. Everybody thinks when he gestures and moves Osha out of the way that his gesture looks like a gesture that dude might have made or something, and that may or may not be the case. I don't know. But for me, I'm firmly of the mindset Kamir's way more important and far dirtier than we think. Considering how bad or evil they played May's childcare version, I found her turn to be abrupt. That isn't a harsh criticism. That's me as an observer, as a fan. I'm talking, dude, we're just pals geeking out here, okay? I'm nerding out about the show. I love what I'm loving and whatnot. And it didn't trip me up, but it made me go, really? I'm all about redemption arcs. Star Wars is about redemption arcs. Okay, the only thing that I think the Rise of Skywalker did well was that it gave Ben a redemption arc, and that's very Star Wars, regardless whether you thought it was messy or not how it happened. Okay, redemption arcs are what this is about. Okay, when you have Space Hitler Darth Vader being redeemed at the end, trust me, redemption arcs are a thing in Star Wars. Kilnaka being taken, whether it's surprised or not, on a forest world, which by the way, Crawford's awesome. I think it's a great place. It looks really nice. When he comes from Kashyyyk, which is itself a forest world, I don't see that as everyone's like, that could never happen. No, this is how you illustrate, this is how you show and don't tell that the enemy is as powerful as they are. Is you show up and dude was caught sleeping at his station. Okay? Never even got an opportunity to get up, get his lightsaber out, do anything. This is a Jedi Master. Now, I'm not going down the rabbit hole of how could they explain that? That's impossible. What I'm going to say is that's how awesome this enemy is. Okay? Trust me. Did anyone else think that when Osha's looking, Osha looks so shell-shocked, and when dude floats down behind her, I immediately got shades of Clone Wars Count Dooku when he comes down and is like, "Oh, we're going to blah blah blah," and you're like, "Oh my goodness!" I loved that symmetry, and I thought that it really showcased who this guy is. And again, we're going to get into my whole theory crafting about who that person is and whatnot. I do think it's Khmer, by the way, all day. Regardless of who Khmer is, I do think it's Khmer. The other thing was, can we discuss the Jedi being so clearly outmatched? And I'm okay with that. So there's a bunch of speculation that goes into who the Sith guy is, but let me talk for just a second. I'm going to park right here for a second on the idea that the Jedi were outmatched and outnumbered. This many of them. How could it happen? How could it happen? Calm down. It happened because let's look at this. This is the High Republic. This is the peak of Jedi culture. In Phantom Menace, 100 years, or a little less than 100 years, probably about 80 years down the line, you get a sitting on their laurels, fat and lazy Jedi who have become blind to what the dark side's doing all around them, okay? This is peak Jedi. This is peak Jedi who are at their height of their hubris and cannot imagine anything can stop them. They're used to dealing with thugs in bars cutting off arms or mind shifting, trade delegates and people to be like, look, tell me the truth and blah, blah, blah. Like they haven't flexed these kind of muscles in a long time. Totally fine and down for that. So I feel like it's not unrealistic that they show up thinking they can be like, and dude even does. By order of the Jedi Council and the Coruscant and blah, 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 we turn yourself in. He's talking to to May at the time. Not realizing that what he's really facing down at this moment is the dude, his master. So I feel like that's a huge jump for him to show up and suddenly be like, Papa! They weren't expecting it. It was a sneak attack, bottom line. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, that feels really on brand for the Sith, if we're going to call them that. So yeah, it was, I'm okay with that. Again, I'm okay with that. Now let's get into some speculation real quick. I've heard speculation that this guy is an apprentice who becomes more powerful. I've also heard speculation that he might be from a previous version of things before the rule of two was put in place. In fact, I don't think it's unrealistic to say we could very well be looking at the eventual creation of the rule of two that may come from this, because the position of Acolyte isn't often referenced. Honestly, I think it's like I've seen it in the Star Wars role-playing game from back in the day, of which I have played my fair share. Okay, so we're talking like a ton of Star Wars role-playing books. So I'm used to the concept of an acolyte, and I think it's one that does stem from so many years prior to the Battle of Yavin, whatever. And that's again getting into some EU territory. So chances are a lot of that's not very canon, and that's okay. That's okay. Who is Khmer? I believe I'm of the mindset there's two people Khmer can either be. Either A, he's a brand new character they invented. I don't think he's the master himself. I don't think he's actually like the guy. I don't think he's Plagueis. Because a lot of people have been speculating that. He could either be Darth Venomous, who was someone that Plagueis trained alongside Tenebrius, or he's Tenebrius. I don't think he's Plagueis. Chances are it's going to be Venomous, or Venomous, whatever you want to call him, who's somebody that we know very little about from anything else, which would make it totally like a wide open space, wide open canvas to play with. And I'm down, totally here for it. So would love to hear your thoughts on this. But overall, I enjoyed the half of an episode we got. I thought right as you get up to the part when it was starting to get good, they cut away. And again, it didn't have the sense of completion that an actual, because even a part one has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even if that end is going to be leading us to something else. Okay, best example of that, Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back lives wonderfully by itself, but it clearly ends with you knowing they must go on to something else. It isn't a cliffhanger per se, but it's enough that you know there's going to be there has to be a part 2 because the story isn't over yet. The best cliffhangers tell you a complete story, but then end or hinge on the next chapter or moment in this story. This didn't do that. This stopped. This was, we got the fight, explosion happens, blah, 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 this thing, cut. Someone physically cut the back half of an episode. That's a cardinal editing sin. So I think that's the biggest problem I've got with a lot of these Star Wars series is things like Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka, is they're editing wrong. They're taking material, and rather than having it be enough to make a full series out of, they're dicing up a big movie, and that's not a good way to do things. But regardless, there you go. Now you know. And noise at the battle, you have with me. You know it all yourself. What's an all index for me for this? Well, considering we're gonna go, I got half an episode, you're gonna get half the index. So instead of out of 10, we're doing out of 5. What is my score out of 5? I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. All right, guys, comment below. Tell me what you think. Was I right? Was I wrong? Do you take umbrage with some stuff? Let's keep it respectful. Let's keep the dialogue and discourse healthy. I don't like a lot of the hate stuff I'm hearing, so do me a favor, please. If you think I agree with you because of anything having to do with woke anything, you're in the wrong. This isn't the classroom for you. So let's just move on past that. I'm all about criticisms that are genuine, which is some of the writing ain't great, some of the acting isn't wonderful, but overall, I like what they're adding to the universe. We're seeing Jedi, and that's all I ever wanted as a kid. We never got a lot of Jedi. It's like I said in my first review. So anyways, all right, guys, I'll talk to you very soon. Do me a favor. This right here is the playlist for the rest of the season. So if you've been catching up on, that's last week's abysmal episode review, and you can always subscribe down there. All right, guys, I'll talk to you again soon. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.